Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Talk. My name is Ryan, and today I will be giving you my full review of the Michael Jackson biopic titled Michael. I was able to see it on Thursday, and I posted a review on YouTube as well as my TikTok. But I wanted to give you my more in-depth thoughts as I have a lot more that I was wanting to talk about the movie. Like I said, if you've seen the Michael movie, please give me your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of the movie? And without further ado, let's get right into the review. The first thing I want to discuss before getting into my review is a big topic of discussion going around about this movie, and that is the Rotten Tomato score, and more importantly, the big jump between critics and audiences, where critics currently have it at a 38%, meanwhile audiences have it all the way up at a 97%, which is the highest audience score for a music biopic, which is very impressive, but it's more how are audiences and critics so completely different on the film. And I think that's a big topic of discussion. And I remember when I first saw the Rotten Tomatoes score debut, I was very much, definitely surprised by it. But now audiences and critics are very split on the movie and very indifferent on the film. And I'll get into my thoughts on the film. Now getting into my personal thoughts on the film. Obviously, we've gone over the critical and audience reception, and where do I lie on that? Personally, I definitely enjoyed this movie. Now, I will start off by saying some of maybe the more mixed and negative aspects of this film, because I will say this film is definitely flawed. It is, I probably wouldn't say it's my favorite music biopic. I think Elvis I still liked a little bit more, but like I said, we'll get into it's a little bit harder to kind of compare these films because obviously Michael is supposed to be a part one, and I believe that's what it's going to be, but it's hard to fully grasp the story because it's not the full story of Michael Jackson. So it's hard to compare it to like Elvis or Rocket Man or A Complete Unknown, where it's one movie and it's the complete story. But overall, I did have a ton of fun with the movie, and this film felt like experiencing a Michael Jackson concert. Although, like I said, going back to the negatives, my overall negative aspects is just, for a Michael Jackson biopic movie, I do feel like they could have gotten a little bit more creative with it, and that sometimes it follows the stereotypical biopic formula. And, I think it's Michael Jackson. He's obviously the most famous singer of all time, famous pop star, famous possible human being, in a long time. And I feel like they could have been more unique because he lived a very unique life. But that's where I'm kind of split a little bit on the movie, where some of the story aspects I felt they could have gone a little deeper. Obviously, it could have been a little bit longer as well. It just is a little bit over 2 hours, and I feel like even though you're only telling half of his story, I felt like you could have added another 10 to 15 minutes to kind of flesh out the story a little bit more. But with that being said, when it comes down to the simple aspect of, when it's Michael Jackson performing, and whether it was Billie Jean or Bad and Human Nature or Thriller, all the different performances are just so phenomenally done. Where, you start, really getting in with the music and really enjoying it. Like I said, my personal favorite performance I did like was the Motown Billie Jean performance. I think they recreated that so well. Along with, of course, the Thriller performance was so well. And, of course, Human Nature and Bad also were very nice. And they really, I think, definitely leave you with a good... they leave you ending the film on a very good note, as those two performances I thought were extremely well done. And then getting into the performances, very simply, Jafar Jackson was the only person, in my opinion, that could bring Michael Jackson to the big screen. Whether it's the way he talks, which I will say, first hearing it, I was incredibly surprised by how good, he sounded like Michael Jackson. And the dancing, everything, he fully embodied his uncle, Michael Jackson. And he made this film so much better than it could have been with anyone else in the lead. So I want to give him definitely a shout out on that. And along with Coleman Domingo as Joe Jackson. At the end of the day, the story about Joe Jackson definitely is a lot of negative. I've heard a lot of obviously negative things, that he was abusive and he was not a good person. And, Coleman Domingo did a good job of performing that. And I think his performance also was just very well done. And I think it's very simple that if you are a Michael Jackson fan, that you really are going to enjoy this. If you come for just wanting to experience his music, kind of like a concert form, and there's a lot. They just don't go a lot into more about him that you don't already know. But even with that said, it's just the concerts are so entertaining, and the music performances just carry this film along with Jafar Jackson as he became Michael Jackson, and he just did such a good job in the movie. And that's kind of where I really just had a ton of fun with this movie. And as a final little note before I leave, obviously, as we said, this is intended to be a part 1. So the biggest question I want to ask you guys before I get into it is, what would you like to see in part 2? Because obviously, personally, one of my favorite Michael Jackson songs, well, Man in the Mirror is one of them that they obviously didn't play, but, obviously Smooth Criminal. That's another Michael Jackson song that's, possibly my favorite of his that we didn't get to see, and I just cannot wait to see the performances of that. Man in the Mirror, They Don't Really Care About Us, and just so many other of his later era songs. And I think I will say, well, the story was a little bit lighter on this end, where it was more focused on the great music and the performances, and it definitely had a story where it was him dealing with his relationship with his father and overcoming that tough relationship they had. I do want to see the second movie kind of get more into the later half of his life. So that's some of the things I'd like to see in part 2. And that's going to do it for today's video. Please let me know what you guys thought of the Michael Jackson biopic movie. Whether you liked it or you didn't, please leave that in the comments below. What you would like to see in part 2, and just overall your excitement about getting a part 2 to the story. And if you could always please leave a like and subscribe, that'd always be much appreciated. And I will see you in the next video.